Good evening. Once again, welcome to this Bible walkthrough. I'm Stuart Davis, deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. Here as a flawed man, just giving some exposure to what it's like to be an everyday Christian and kind of their impressions and takes on things. And one of the big takes on things is the Bible, something that we all kind of feel is very special to Christianity. It's the Word of God, or it's words inspired by God, and it's where we get a lot of our, or pretty much the almost exclusively all of our teachings on what God expects out of us and wants from us. It's also something that can come across as the concept of the Bible is something that can come across very dry. We think about books that are very thick and a lot of thou shalt not, a lot of rules, a lot of gnashing of teeth, revelation. But what a lot of people don't know is if you don't dig into the Bible, you don't realize that there's a lot of not only is there a lot of inspiration there from inspirational words from Jesus and the folks who follow after him, but also in the Old Testament, where you have the accounts of a lot of people who do good, a lot of people who do bad, but the interactions that they have and the issues that they have throughout their lives and the conflicts they have are all very much relatable things that you can oftentimes take away from and help you in your everyday life. The Old Testament is the establishment of the fundamentals, especially the first 5 chapters. We're talking about the creation of the universe. We're talking about a lot of people that you may have heard of throughout your life that play a key role here, and also one of them being Moses. We'll get into him later, but today we're going to go through a little bit of genealogy because that's what's in chapter 5. We're picking up from Adam. We're going to find out how we get from Adam to Noah, and Noah, as we all know, has a big role to play. And we're going to go through a couple of chapters. We're going to go through a few chapters tonight and kind of review this. So this stream might be a little bit longer than normal, but I promise you it's going to have some good content to it. In the interest of not boring you to death, I am going to paraphrase genealogy passages, and the first one we really get to is chapter 5 in Genesis, where we talk about Adam's lineage. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and if you don't know, the folks I use the vehicle I use for this is BibleGateway.com. Can't recommend it enough. It's a great and hang on a second. There we go. Can't recommend it enough. It is a great source, easy to use and free. And if you got even when you have a smartphone, I recommend it over the apps. So we'll get into this because, like we said, we do have a little bit of reading to do tonight, and it gets a little dry at first. So I'll read the first part. This is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them, and he named them mankind when they were created. So we'll just go through this. Adam lived a total of 930 years, and then he died. From him was Seth. Seth lived 912 years, then he died. Enosh lived 905 years, then he died. His son Kenan, 910 years, then he died. Mahalalel, he lives 895 years, then he dies. From him is Jared. Jared lives 962 years, then he dies. Then from him, Enoch, he lives 365 years. Interesting thing here. Enoch walked faithfully with God, and then he was no more because God took him away. So it doesn't actually say that Enoch died. Really really wish, and like I said, I'm picking up points here where I want to kind of branch off little things that I might do little side videos about. What's the story with Enoch? What is the difference between him and the rest of the folks here? Because um, from here we've got folks living, these men living, close to 1,000 years, and then dying, and he lives a third of that really, and God takes him away. What was that all about? There's got to be more to that story. It'd be very interesting to see how righteous was this man. There are some very righteous people in the Old Testament, and anyway, Enoch had Methuselah as a son, and we all know the reference to Methuselah, somebody who's very old. Methuselah lives 969 years. Nice. Then he died. One of his sons, Lamech, he lives 777 years. Then he died. Lamech's son is Noah. Noah is 500 years old when he becomes the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So now we'll get into Noah's story. Right before we start on this, there is interest in the longevity of man in early Genesis, and there's a lot of theories to go behind it. I don't want to get hung up on that because we are going into into a different subject. We're doing into a different account with Noah. But I want you to know, yes, I do want to do a sidebar where we discuss the longevity of humankind at the beginning in Genesis. We haven't gotten fully away from that because Noah, like I said, Noah's 500 years old when he gives birth to his sons, and his sons are grown men when this happens. Chapter 6, Wickedness in the World. Now we're going to get into the story. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. And then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he made the human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." So we have a lot going on in here. The build-up, the precursor to Noah's story. And that is that the sons of God, so we assume those to be angels, they looks like they intermarry, and or interbreed, I guess is the best way to discuss that, with the women, and from there are the Nephilim. So kind of the best way to describe it is like a demigod in Greek mythology. There are thoughts that a good comparison would be like Achilles or somebody like that. There is, I think the Bible does say that Goliath is like a remnant of the Nephilim, or kind of a distant ancestor of Nephilim, and that was kind of what gave him his great strength and his size. But again, this is another good, interesting side story to go off of and to branch off of. So I need to really start taking some notes and really just addressing these things. Just little cool little tidbits that that make this thing more interesting, because it's almost mentioned in it really is mentioned in passing. It's part of the build-up. The world is becoming more wicked, and not just the world of man, but also the sons of God. So we're thinking about angels here. So God has created man and woman has become this temptation to the angels, and there's great wickedness, turning away from what is good and pure and wholesome. And God is sitting there thinking, man, what have I done? I feel like maybe I've gone too far with this, and maybe I should start over. Which is interesting because you don't generally see a being so incredibly powerful, and he's having second thoughts about something he did. Um, but there he is. But something about Noah kind of changes his mind. A lot of times you'll see this. God has lost his patience with mankind, but one person in particular catches his eye because of the great traits. Just being an example of all the great traits that God has put inside of us, that He wants to see come out in us, and Noah seems to have this. So he looks to Noah and he's like, okay, here is a redeeming personality within the earth, and really just one of, if not the only, folks I can find on this planet who is worth saving. So, if he's worth saving, looks like, I mean, you should save him, right? This is the account of Noah and his family. We're in verse 9. Verse 9 of chapter 6, by the way. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his people among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening for 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I am going to bring the floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, and you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. So, I always thought, and maybe he's not the best person to bring up in light of the last few years, but Bill Cosby, I thought, had a great stand-up routine about Noah when God comes to talk to him. And, Noah's, builds something with doing some carpentry, and he's, sanding something, and all of a sudden, hey, Noah. And Bill, I can't do it the way Bill Cosby does. He's got the very expressive eyes. This is like vintage Bill Cosby stand-up, which is clean and hilarious, by the way, in case any of y'all are wondering. It's definitely worth looking up. But he thinks God's pulling a prank on him. He's saying, hey, I want you to build this boat, and I'm going to flood the earth. And it's just a great routine, because it kind of humanizes the whole aspect, because you think Noah's just like, okay, I guess we're going to do this. God's very specific in his measurements to Noah too. And one of the parts where you could start to really see, if you're a person who believes in the Genesis being very metaphorical, this is where it's starting to mesh with the literal. Because one of the things you see all across the earth are accounts of a great flood. And this is basically, the origin point for that. It very much seems like God intends to kill everybody on the planet. We don't really understand if he was referring to everybody in, the land that Adam had been taken to, or had set up and started establishing his family with, or if he meant he was going to kill literally everyone on the planet. But it was enough that he wanted to gather a bunch of animals, and he was going to flood it for some time. Noah is very much is given a very big task here. This is a very large endeavor, but he's up for it. That's a lot of work for a man 5 centuries old. Luckily, he's got sons to help him out with it. So then we move on to chapter 7. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep the various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." And Noah did all the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came to the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and all creatures that moved along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every kind of creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings, pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female, of every living thing as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished, birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swam over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Everything on the face of the earth was wiped out, people and animals, and the creatures that moved along the ground, and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. It's a long time. That's a long time. Good time to find out that you do a good job building boats too. If Noah hadn't done it exactly right, I guess. I guess we wouldn't be here. It does. This does another interesting question we have here, and something that people might question is, again, the propagation of the human race after Noah. It just seems, you have folks all scattered throughout the earth. And how does this all happen? How does that all happen within a short time? We think about, young earth creationists or folks who believe in intelligent design, and this is where those two theories don't really line up with each other very much. This is where you see a big disconnect here. Again, I think that there's probably some very literal truth to this, and also some metaphorical as well. We're talking about a great flood that probably destroys a great deal. Does it destroy everything? I don't know, but it is not what is not in question is that this event was divinely brought, and Noah does what he's told. Noah does what he's told. I said 500 years. It looks like it happens when he's 600 years old. Daggone Noah. Imagine working 600 years. Chapter 8. So we've been on this boat quite some time, better part of a year, and you're stuck in there with a bunch of animals. I can't imagine how bad the smell was. Can't imagine how bad the smell was, and just the sheer noise going on. Noah's probably praying to God every night that he can take away two of his senses, a sense of hearing and a sense of smell. And probably a sense of taste, too, because that's probably being affected by that. Chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Pause right here. Noah's probably very happy at this point, because like I said, it's probably filthy in that boat. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heaven had been closed, and the rains had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of the 150 days the water had gone down. And on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the top of the mountains became visible. After 40 days, Noah opened a window that he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find nowhere to perch because there was water all over the surface of the earth, so it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days and again sent the dove out from the ark. When the dove returned to him that evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again, but this time it did not return to him. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase the number on it." So Noah came out, together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that moves on land came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and the clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." Well, there we go. Noah's story is not altogether over right now. But the part with the ark is. God gave Noah a pretty big task. Noah doesn't seem to complain. He builds it along with I'm assuming with the help of his sons and wives, and they go out on a great journey while God destroys everything around them. Now it's very interesting. A lot of people are out there looking for remains of the ark, and there are some questions that every time they think that they might have it, it turns out to be something else. Maybe they'll find it one day. I hope that they do. It would be great. It would be a great step forward in giving people more hope that Christianity is something that is worth putting your faith into. Putting your faith into something is very difficult when you can't see and hear everything. Noah and many of the other folks in the Old Testament have the benefit of hearing directly from God. God is speaking directly to them, and it's much easier, I think, to build up your faith when the person when God is speaking directly to you. It is one of the biggest things, biggest benefits of being the ancient Hebrews and the Israelites, is that God is doing that. We as Christians, pretty much most everything post Jesus is very much a God hands off. He's not speaking to you directly. You're not hearing booming clouds and voice coming out. Angels aren't coming and visiting you and telling you, "Hey, you're going to do this." At least it's never happened to me. Never happened to me, and it probably will never happen to you. If it does, you either did something very wrong or you're getting ready to do something very right. Um, but, you know, that's one of the benefits they have. Of course, our benefit is Jesus Christ died for us, and made salvation for us much better. But in Noah's case, um, you know, he has a lot that he has to witness and go through and basically start over. Now again, you know, did he literally kill everybody uh, and all the animals on the earth? Perhaps. However, you know, if God flooded the earth and he sent a dove out, and the dove comes back, and Noah sends the dove out, and the dove comes back with an olive branch with leaves on it, um, you know, that's either indicative that God didn't destroy everything. He just we're using everything in a very metaphorical or a very exaggerated term. Like there was so much death and destruction from this flood that it's just, you know, it's practically everything. But if you're in the water that long, there is no olive branch that lives that long underwater. So either God, through the power of God, which is entirely possible, um, you know, many of the plants on the earth were able to survive being underwater for, several months. Um, or, most of the land was destroyed, and it was just while this stuff was receding, the boat, the ark, finally got to the place where it needed to rest, and that's where God intended it to be, and that's where God intended Noah to get off with all the creatures in the ark, and start anew and start fresh, where there may have been some um, where there may have been some people and animals remaining from the flood. Again, we talk about Goliath, his interaction and his confrontation with David is much further down the road in the Old Testament, but it's a while afterwards. So you would think that um, there were some survivors of the flood, and it makes me think that it's more of a very much a dramatic description of how much death and destruction there was. It's just everybody dies, right? But perhaps some survive. Again, this is one of those accounts where it's easy to get caught up in how literal you take things. And if you start trying to parse it out too much and analyze it too much, you're missing the point. You're missing the point of this story where, the end is the point of Noah's story, because we don't really talk about Noah and what he goes through and how much he labors and how much doubt he has. Noah pretty much does what he's asking for. He's a righteous man. It's just they describe that at the beginning. What we hear in this story is God's frustration with humans and God's frustration with us. But even though he's so frustrated with us that he wants to just wipe us out and start from scratch, maybe start a whole new universe or a whole new earth or whatever, there are traits in us that Noah embodied that reminded God why he created us in the first place, and made it that showed to him that we are worth saving, we are worth destroying, and we are worth continuing to give us chances. And he does throughout this. Trust me, when we get into the Israelites, you're going to understand God's patience is absolutely infinite, because I don't understand how he puts up with some of the stuff that we do during the time of the Israelites. But in this case, Noah makes God very happy, and he does this by sacrificing burnt offerings on it, and the aroma was nice. I mean, who doesn't like the smell of barbecue, right? Is Noah the original griller? Was Noah the original barbecue guy? And just simply because Noah started barbecuing, is that why God decided to save humankind? Think about that next time you're eating pulled pork sandwiches, or some ribs, or in my case, my favorite, brisket. Um, just that smell, just the smell of meat, made God so happy that He says, you know what? Never going to destroy this again. This flood that I did, not going to do it again. Just because your offerings to me were just smelled so good, just the pure smell of that stuff. So that's like I said, that's the story of the flood and Noah's involvement in it. And again, remember, look at what you're supposed to be drawing out of these accounts, out of what happens, as an example to understand about things that you are, especially the beginning of Genesis, because we have a lot of people making mistakes. We've got a lot of early frustration of God because we're making mistakes, but He still finds us worthy. And it's not just Noah. It's not just Adam. It's not just these folks. It's not the folks that we're going to be reading about. It's not just the folks that you look up every day and goes, man, they're a great person. I wish I was as good as them. You might be on the inside, and you might be on the outside too to people, and you just don't realize it. But it doesn't matter if you're as good as the person next to you. What matters is what's in your heart, and what it is. If you're making that effort, are you letting God in? Because the more you let God into your life, the more you're going to represent the traits that make you, when you see in people who are like, man, I wish I was as nice and just good and kind-hearted as that other person. You can be that. You can be that. I can be that as well. But all too often we make decisions that take us away from it. That doesn't mean God's given up on us. God wants us to continue to reach out to Him. So do that as you go through this for the next day, and next week. Next week we're going to talk about what happens in the aftermath of the flood with Noah and his family. So take care, all. Hope you hung in there for the full half-hour show. But leave a comment, like the stream. Let me know what you're thinking, and come